Jace Tunnell here. Today we're out on the water. We're in the Upper Laguna Madre and we're flying drones to be able to count birds on these rookery islands that are out here. And so if you're a fisherman, you've ever been out into the Upper Laguna Madre or actually anywhere along the Texas coast, you've probably seen these islands that have signs on them about not to get near them because there's birds nesting on them. Well, the Hart Research Institute is actually going around using a drone and counting how many birds are nesting on these islands. So let's get with the scientists at the Hart Research Institute and talk to them about what they're finding out. Let's go.
So there's a lot of agencies that are looking at how well these birds are doing. So, you know, earlier on in Texas history, the Intercoastal was created. During that time, massive, the spoil islands were all created as well. And if the habitat's there, the birds are going to use it. And they did. And they actually did very well on a lot of those islands. There's been a decent amount of research, but as time's gone on, some species have been, have reduced in the number of breeding pairs more than others. Skimmers, being one of the more notable, but others are, threatened or protected species with special conservation concerns like reddish egret. So there's a lot of species that are important on these islands, but the islands are also disappearing really quickly.
One of the tools that we use to help managers decide which islands to restore or to rehabilitate is how productive the birds are on these different types of islands. So we have to measure how many chicks are actually being produced, because you could have a lot of birds nest and then if they fail every year, it doesn't help the population. So to get that information is really difficult. We either have to go in the old-fashioned ways, to go in with a nest pole and look into the nest to see how many chicks are there. And of course, we're flushing all the birds and causing a big ruckus, and then predators can come in because there's no adults. But a more modern approach is to use drones and send up your drone, which at a certain altitude will avoid flushing them. And then the drone can fly back and forth. And they won't capture images of every nest, but sooner or later an adult is going to stand up or shift to the side and we'll be able to look under it. And we can count how many eggs and how many chicks are produced. That information is very critical to help managers understand which types of islands are the best ones to restore. So here we are walking around one of Texas's coastal rookery islands. There's about 300 of them along the coast that get used for nesting by water birds. And this particular one had over 1,000 nests on it this year. And it was created by people cutting a channel in the Laguna Madre for boat navigation. They needed somewhere to pile the dirt, so they piled it up and plants grew and birds responded.
One thing that I do for the lab is digitizing islands. So delineating areas of the island that are covered in vegetation versus sand or bare ground, for example, because there's different types of birds that nest in different substrates. So for example, sand like this can support black skimmers or Caspian terns, other species of terns, whereas vegetation like this over here, these taller, more mature trees, and even those nesting structures can support like wading birds that need to be elevated off of the ground to raise their young.
So I'm arriving at one of my vegetation sampling sites. From the drone imagery that we collect, we can count nests, but we can also look at the vegetative cover on the islands. But some of that does require ground truthing of what you're actually seeing in those imagery. So we use the maps of the islands that we get from the drone imagery. I then isolate areas of vegetation where I can identify the dominant cover and then come out and ground truth what those species are.
Stable. That looks great.
There we go.
All right, perfect. Now with this, we can get elevations with our drone to a few centimeters accuracy. So it's really a nice addition to the equipment that we have. The drone will give you elevation by itself, but this RTK equipment just gets you so much more precise. And a few inches here on the island that is so low is really important to the birds.
Oh yeah, so the surveys are done typically weekly. We will go out, we'll survey the exact same transect, so oftentimes, or most of the time, those are entire islands of birds. So we'll then take those images, bring them back, and then they're post-processed, so then I go through them one at a time. And so we're trying to go throughout the season such that we get birds that are initiating towards the beginning or the end of the season throughout inclement weather. So if there's any sort of storm events or otherwise, we're able to get before or afterward. Our images are good enough with these cameras that we can tell what species of plant the bird happens to be nesting on, or the exact substrate, should it be on white or dark sand. So we're able to pull out a ton of other variables that we can use to model why birds are doing better or worse at these different islands and different areas across the coast. And then from that, I also have the total number of nests that did succeed, and from that I can say, all right, how many chicks did each one fledge with? And so from that I can get productivity. So I have both daily survival as well as how many chicks are being produced by each nest. That way I have a really good figure of how well is each island actually doing, how well are these species doing, and is there a difference between island size, region, things they're nesting on. We're able to get a much better sense of that.
This area you can see is a very typical of a colony. You have nests at different levels. You have multiple nests, so lots of birds here, and some are nesting above the other one. The only reason we don't see some at the very top is because the hurricane and tropical storm kind of took those out, but the ones down lower are protected. So this is a very common kind of scene in a colony, a nesting colony. So what you see here are some tubes that are protecting new plantings. Because again, these larger birds, the herons, need trees, woody vegetation, and that you could wait out here for years and years and hope one arrives in a seed, form of a seed, or you could help nature along by planting them. And if you do that, you need some kind of tube to protect it. Nothing can eat it that way, and the grass doesn't come and overgrow it. So the Coastal Bend Bays and Estuaries program has gone out to some of the islands and planted seedlings, and then what you're seeing here are the tubes that are protective of the seedlings.
My role in this research is to combine long-term counts of birds, movement data from tagged birds, and nest monitoring data from drone imagery into an index that helps managers decide which islands have the most potential benefits for bird populations.
Now our research program focusing on colony islands or rookery islands where these water birds nest is of interest to coastal managers because these islands are under a lot of threat. Sea levels are rising, there's erosion, subsidence, and so essentially they're sinking relative to the water level. And these birds require these high sites, so we're losing about 2% of island area per year in South Texas. And so there's not that many years of islands left, basically. So managers know that, they're responding, and they are looking for advice and guidance on where they should try to put sediment to counter that loss through subsidence and erosion. And our research is designed to help them with that.
Wow, using a drone to be able to count all the eggs and the chicks and not even having to get off the boat, that's the way to go. And I mean, the best part about it is that resource managers are actually being able to use the data to be able to say, oh, we want an island here, we want an island there. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that of applied science. Okay, that's enough for this episode of Beachcombing. I'm gonna go ahead and head back to the beach, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.